everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're super excited about this conversation that we're going to have for you all today. Community Conversation, Earth Day, el día super padrísimo de la Tierra. Les damos las gracias por estar aquí con todos nosotros. We're super happy that our community is here with us, and I'm super excited about the panelists that we have with us today. I just can't wait to start. And how are you today?
I am doing well, friend. It's great to see you, and happy Earth Day to all. I feel like we've been celebrating all week, but today is the actual day. And Fely, just like you mentioned, I am so excited to welcome two incredible educators, longtime Flipgrid friends, and our friends IRL too. So are you ready to kick off this conversation and get it started?
Let's do it, my friend.
Awesome. We are going to welcome our good friend, Jodie Deinhammer, to the screen. Jody, welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Would you tell us where you're tuning in from, perhaps what you teach or your content area focus, and maybe a fun little fact about yourself?
All right. I am coming to you live from Dallas, Texas, specifically Coppell, Texas. And I'm currently still in my classroom right now. I teach 7th grade science and 8th grade gardening. A fun fact about myself. Ooh, that was put on the spot. I'm obsessed with animals and I want to live on a farm. And look, I have automatic lights in my room. Ooh.
I know exactly what happens then. And we know you have lots of plants growing in your classroom right now too. What's growing behind you in that greenhouse?
So I have in my classroom right now, I have like 150 sunflowers because we are going to be using them to raise money this Saturday at Earth Fest Coppell. We are raising money to put clean water wells in Sudan through my environmental club. And yeah, it's just I come in every morning and I water all the sunflowers. It's fantastic. I love it.
Amazing. Well, Jody, we are so excited to welcome you to this. We have another incredible panelist. Let's go ahead and add him to the screen. This is Dr. Ramesh Laungani. How are you, friend?
Hey, Ann. Hey, Fely. Hey, Jody. Nice to see you all again. Yeah, I'm just excited to be here, excited for an Earth Day conversation and talk about how we can help the planet and help ourselves.
That's awesome. So, yeah. Dr. Langani, Ramesh, would you tell us a little bit about where you teach, what you teach, fun fact about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a biology professor at Doane University. This is a small liberal arts college right outside Lincoln, Nebraska. And so I'm an ecologist, plant ecologist by training. So I really love that there are plants all over the place. I'm actually in my room that's covered in plants right now.
Awesome.
And so I teach things like climate change biology and conservation biology. And a fun fact about me, it is unrelated to Earth Day, but I sang the national anthem at a Lakers game during college as part of a singing group. That has nothing to do with Earth Day, but it's a fun fact. So scientists do a lot of random things. Yeah.
That's totally impressive. Oh my gosh. Well, we are so excited to welcome you both to this community conversation and celebration, recognition of Earth Day. And I just want to jump right into these questions. So I'd love to know from the both of you. And Jody, if you want to start us off, I'm so curious. And Fely and I were like, we want to know some of their background stories. So how did you both become interested in science in the first place?
For me, it was my senior year. Up until my senior year, I did not like science. I can specifically remember my junior year chemistry teacher sucking the love of science out of me. But my senior year AP science teacher was a basketball coach, but probably the best teacher I ever had, and just made everything so interesting and relevant. And, I was determined to go to med school, and, all kinds of paths changed for me. And that's where it came for me.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And in part of the planning, the conversations that Anne and I were having, I was like, Anne, I want to know, was it an event? Was it someone, a teacher? How did they become interested in science, right? I'm married to a science teacher, so everything here in the house and the two kiddos, they're all about science. So we're constantly talking about science and the different things that can happen. And sometimes I'm like, can we talk about something else? I'm a reading teacher. What do we talk about the last book we read, right? But it's in them, right? It's in their DNA. So before we go into you, my friend, I want to thank you because I want to let everybody know in our audience, in our community, that these two people right here are not only amazing educators, but they're also amazing mentors. So I know Jody Omar was like, she's going to be part of the conversation. Yes, she's going to be part of the conversation. I cannot wait to see her. I cannot wait to, because you've been an amazing mentor, my friend. So thank you to the both of you for being part of this conversation, for your time, and for everything that you do for our students. I want to see, back to you, my friend.
So how did I get interested in science? So my 9th grade biology teacher really introduced me, and she introduced me to science by helping me accept a bad grade in science and help me realize that I can push through that bad grade. And so that was one thing. And then in college, I was also pre-med because I thought I was good at biology. I was good at biology because that's what you do. You become a physician. And then in college, I took an ecology course in the Australian rainforest, and one of my professors was Sri Lankan. And so I had never seen a brown ecologist before. And he just opened my eyes to the magic of ecology. And so I went to graduate school and became an ecologist and never looked back. And so every day in the classroom, I am channeling Dr. Florentine, whether he wants it to be the case or not. Dr. Florentine is with me every day in the classroom. And I also have a number of family members who are teachers in India. So I always try to, think about them as well. So yeah, that's how I got interested in science. Some teachers that just said, hey, you can do this, and here's a part of science that you can do too, ecology.
I appreciate you both sharing just a little part of your journey, and the fact that an educator, educators spark interest, help bring learning to life. But I think back on my own experience, and I remember my honors bio class my freshman year of high school, and we did this really cool bug classification project. And so everybody knew you go bug hunting in your freshman year of high school, and just learning about the different classifications and kind of just exploring the living world around me, that I didn't realize all these creatures lived in my own immediate surroundings, was so fascinating to me. And I loved a good experiment in high school. And of course, as I became an educator, I trended into a different space in gen ed and primary education. But it's so fascinating to just learn what sparked that interest, and how did learning come alive for you, because your own journey brought you to this point as not only a research professor, an ecologist, a science educator, passionate about helping young students and graduate level students. I mean, the whole spectrum of learning. I would love it if you would share a little bit about what teaching science looks like in your classroom or your learning community, and just talk about either what you love to do, strategies, etc. I would love to know more.
Do you want Jody to go first or me?
Ramesh, why don't you go first this time?
Sure. So in my college classroom, my classroom is all about inquiry and helping students ask their own questions. I really try to get rid of textbooks, because for me, science is not about a collection of facts. As a scientist, the fact is the thing that we springboard into the unknown from. And I want my students feeling comfortable in that unknown space, and that they can be the conduits for discovery. And so I want them to really just I want them to think of me as a colleague, and I want them to see that even as a scientist, I say things like, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Let's figure out how to do it. And science, to me, what I want to teach them is that science is not about knowing a pile of stuff. It's about attacking a problem in a systematic, organized manner that allows you to address one question at a time, so that you develop a really clear, detailed picture of a phenomenon that's in front of you. So that's what I try to do. Inquiry, inquiry, inquiry.
I love that.
I just want to retweet everything he just said, because 100% on all of that. All about inquiry, I want kids to leave here with more questions than they have answers to. And I feel like for me, one of the most important things is relevance and solving real world problems. I want them to understand science. I don't want them to memorize things. I don't want to give them tests and quizzes and things like that. I want them to be problem solving. And, you know, I run a lot of challenge-based learning in my classroom to where they are given a problem that we don't know the answer to, and we try to solve it together. And that, for me, that's what my classroom looks like. It looks like a crazy hot mess all the time, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of crazy hot messes, you are not a crazy hot mess, but I do know a little bit about your crazy ideas, Jody. And to all of you tuning in, whether you're listening live, listening in the future, I told our guests, I know them both personally in real life, friends, not only a Flipgrid, but friends in real life. I have some surprises for them, and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go into the way back machine and celebrate learning adventures. So I'm going to start with this, talk about crazy ideas. Jody, you recently tweeted, people tell you your crazy ideas are a bit much, but this is the beautiful thing of an idea. It sparks learning. It ignites curiosity. It helps people not only dig into their own inquiry, extension, learning, exploration, but it's igniting action. And on Earth Day, your students in your learning community are getting very involved. So I know you're very personally interested in community gardens. You have awesome projects happening at your school. I'd love for you to talk about this crazy idea and talk about being a gardening teacher too. What does that look like at your school? You know,
I teaching gardening is a dream. I've always gardened at my house, but never been super successful. And I've always enjoyed it, but it's just not, you know, it's just a hobby. I had the opportunity a few years ago when I came to my middle school. We had just failed a sustainability audit, and our school was just not doing great. And so one of the things on there was to have a school garden. And I was like, I got this, let's do it. And so the kids actually developed the plan. I had never built a garden before. So we built the garden. We started harvesting all this food for our local food bank. You know, in the last year, we've harvested 500 pounds of food to give back to our community in need. And the kids were commenting, and this was earlier this year. They were like, our gardening stuff that we give, it's really cool, but it's really gross. Like, who wants bok choy and Chinese cabbage all the time? Like, can we give them something that would taste good? Can we grow fruit? I was like, I don't know if we can grow fruit or not. Like, it's Texas. Can we grow fruit here? Probably some. So they researched, they figured it all out. They found out what kind of fruit trees would grow. When I went and asked for permission, I definitely did not get a positive feedback on that. They're like, wait, what? You want to build an orchard? I'm like, yes, I do. And it was a lot of pushing and a lot of begging and please, can we do this? The worst that could happen is that the trees die and I move them into the trash. But we got a pomegranate and 2 fig trees, and they look great. Like, they're growing, and we don't have any fruit yet, but they've only been in the ground for a month. So
hey, they're fighting climate change. Every inch that they grow, they're fighting climate change.
We planted 3 trees.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. And the fact that your students are learning about their own civic engagement and how they can really take an active part is so incredibly inspiring. If anybody needs to
what an amazing way to make this relevant, right? Make it relevant, and kids own it.
Yep.
It's their thing, and they own it, and they feel proud about it. Look at the pictures. They're happy about it. They're proud, that's when the learning happens. So it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, friends listening in, definitely give Jody a follow on social, Jodie Deinhammer. But Jody, I have another thing that I want to share, because way back in 2017, you wrote this awesome blog for Flipgrid about Earth Day. And so had this massive global collaboration, and I just kind of wanted to celebrate this. Not only it's Earth Day now, but this was 2017, and you shared a really great way that your students can be citizen scientists, and whether it's starting with a collaboration in students and peers in your school community, beyond. Do you remember this? Going back to
looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. I loved it.
What are your memories of this experience?
You know, this to me is, I loved using Flipgrid to collaborate with other schools. And that's my personal favorite thing about it, is that my kids can interact with kids from all over the world in any time zone without any kind of restrictions, but it's in a safe, protected place. And they get so much out of that kind of interaction. They learn so much, and the stuff that they pick up on in the videos, that they'll talk about their backgrounds or what their school looks like or what they're wearing. And just because it's different from where we are. And it just sparks the most wonderful conversations in the classroom. But yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We need a do-over.
In the Wayback Machine from 2017, which is just, it's fun to look back at some of the tweets from days gone by. And I have one of those for Ramesh coming up in just a moment. But Jody, just to go through a few more things, do you remember this grid? And I'm not going to get into all the student responses, but I wanted to talk about your Flipgrid Imagine grid. I remember sharing this with educators in my community, and I just want to pop this for a moment and talk about these topics: extinct species, epic fails, future me, designer babies, outside the habitable zone, innovations to save Earth. Like, these are powerful conversations where you challenge your students to share their learning and their authentic voice. How does this, what are some of your memories of these? Because I know these date back a little bit too. I know you're doing incredible things currently, but these are memories I have of ideas I shared with my teachers. How does this impact what learning looks like for you and your community?
This was, what year was this?
2018.
2018. So this is the year that my kids decided that, at the beginning of the year, I always ask them, what kind of world issues are we going to solve? How are we going to make a difference this year in our classroom? And this is the year that they wanted to focus on environmental issues, but they couldn't pick one. And so they decided to write a book, and their book was about environmental issues. And so this Flipgrid, the failure one was my favorite. That was at the beginning of the year, talking about how epic fails, talking about how science is all about failure and how you have to embrace it and learn from it. So they had to share something that they had failed at and what they learned from it. And it was hilarious. And their responses were so funny. And they, I think we had a celebrity guest post on that one too.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, open it. You'll recognize him.
Well, this is in the, where did I just lost it? Why can't I see it now?
Oh, it's there. You just, since you're still in it, it wouldn't be noticed. There you go. Yeah.
Thanks, Ramesh.
Is it archived?
Right? No. I just didn't know if we wanted to go right into who are we looking for?
Babies. It's one of the very first ones. There's so many on there. It was Charlie. He left. He talked about how his first version of what he wanted Flipgrid to be wasn't as successful as he wanted, and how he changed it. And the kids were freaking out. They were like, this is like the guy that invented Flipgrid.
That's so cool.
It was super cute. But yeah, those little topics were really fun. And it was, not even looking at it now, I'm like, oh, I miss them. I see their little faces, their whole face.
Yeah, most of them probably out of high school by now, right? Yeah. Well, one more thing too, because I know this was a recent share earlier this year at Educatopia. You shared this article about setting up a science fair during a pandemic. And I just wanted to ask, if you had one epic piece of advice for teachers right now, learning looks different as we've all had to pivot. What would you say about still celebrating and showcasing the learning?
Yeah, I feel like this year, our kids, especially in the last year, have found so many things that they're passionate about and need a place to celebrate it. I'm losing my lights again. Y'all, I'm so sorry.
It's all good. This is part of life as a teacher, right?
You can see me get up. I just get up and dance, and then it comes back on. But I'll give you an example of a kid that we found out today that he won an award from the Redford Center for his science project. He did it all on his own. He developed his own citizen science project about birdhouses. So he's building birdhouses for no charge, and people can purchase them from him or get them from him. He'll send it to them, and then they put it in their yard, and then they capture images of the birds to see what kind of birds are nesting in the house. Wow. And so it's just amazing to me, these ideas that kids have. And I feel like over the last year, they've had all this extra time, and some of them are using it for some amazing things. And so my advice is just to it always comes back to having good relationships with kids and loving on kids, and they know that you care. They start to share things like that, and then you can help them figure out how to share their voice and how to amplify their voice. So, again, it's just, you got to know your kids.
I love that. I love that. And this is why I love having these conversations. Educators are better together. And so hearing you reflect, whether it's a strategy, a best practice, a learning moment that you've had, like, that's what we take, and that's what we use to kind of like inspire our own practice, because we're lifelong learners ourselves as educators, right? And I think that's something I admire in both of you. And Fely and I were sort of having these fangirl moments as we're like, oh my gosh, both of them are coming on Earth Day, because you are leaders in this space, sharing incredible ideas. And Jody, as I was going through these memories, I was like, I remember this. Yep. I saw that tweet. I remember this. Oh, I shared this with my teachers. And it's just so special to have you on. Ramesh, are you ready for your trip down memory lane?
I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever you're going to throw at me. I'm ready for it.
One of our good friends, a mutual friend, Michael Drezick, who's a coach in upstate New York, tweeted this, and this is dated 2018. So your students collaborated with middle school students in Michael's class, and he was tweeting about boosting knowledge of the latest scientific research and love of science in general. How cool to see college students inspiring the future. Do you remember this collab?
I do. And Michael has been a great partner in this. So shout out to Michael. And I love doing this because it allows for me this is entirely possible because of Flipgrid. The only reason this is possible is because of Flipgrid. And I was collaborating with Michael's classes. I was collaborating with other classes. I connected with a student, a classroom in Germany. And what was great with 10th graders in Germany, was we were able to bring, my students were able to gain a lot of science communication skills. How do we read a scientific paper at the college level and then really translate it for an audience that might not be familiar with all of that scientific jargon? So that's a skill set my students were learning. But then it was also bringing cutting edge research into those classrooms that those teachers may not have known about. And so what was great, I think one of my favorite things was not just my students making a one-way video. The middle school students were asking questions back, and that conversation, there were some amazing questions from those students that my students had to be like, how do I answer that? I even had some middle school students call my students out and say, your video is a little bit boring. And I was like, great, that's awesome. And so my students were building up their skill set. But really what I saw in the middle school students was young minds being inspired about the next question in science. And that was amazing. There was one video where a student replied to one of my college students, said, I had never really been interested in science before, but now you got me interested. And done, goal achieved, right? And I told that student, I said, this is something that you don't even realize the impact you're going to have for 20 years on this kid, because you made a 3-minute Flipgrid video about a paper about climate change. And so it was a great way to bring things like the NGSS and climate change into those classrooms, and have those middle school students, think about climate change from a different perspective.
Wow. And what a powerful collaboration to really challenge perceptions, solidify concepts, understanding, and
absolutely.
And the bonus is the level up of communication, right? Wow, that's so cool.
And the opportunity, sorry, go ahead.
No. The middle school students were coming with all these solutions. They were like, what if we had more electric vehicles? Maybe we could help the bears this way. And what if we had more wind turbines? And so they were just, their brains were going, and that was amazing to see.
That's awesome. Well, Fely, if you want to say that, I'm going to shift the screen too, but I want you to have the opportunity to say what you were talking about.
And I just wanted to add, the amazing collaboration that happened, right? But also your students the best way to learn something, they always say that it's by teaching it, right? And be ready. And be ready. Like if those students are going to have questions, I have to be ready to answer those questions, right? So I love it. I love the fact that they were exposed to that, because it's also learning it, teaching it, but it's also an example of real life.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Well, so this is another group on Flipgrid, just like Jodie's Imagine. This is 1,000 STEM women, and this is a gift that keeps on giving, because this is a mission that you have to give diverse women a voice and talk about their role in STEM. So I'd love it if you would share a little bit about how this came to be, what it is, and the amazing resource that it is.
Sure. So the 1,000 STEM Women topic is a free library via Flipgrid of now 104 responses from female scientists from all over the globe, explaining the science that they do and making science and science careers very specific. There's Liz from Flipgrid, Liz Maddie, making very specific scientific careers tangible, real humans. So I think for a lot of students, they even in college, they see scientists as biologists, chemists, physicists. They see these very broad categories of scientists. But for me, I'm a plant ecosystem ecologist. I'm a very specific type of scientist. And so I wanted to highlight how many different types of scientists are out there in the world, because I want a student to be able to look at this and say, I didn't realize that was a thing. So there's you scroll by Rebecca Calisi. Rebecca is a reproductive neurobiologist, and who knew that was a thing? But when you think about it, you're like, of course, organisms' biology changes when they are becoming, when they're getting ready to have a baby, when they are having a baby, after they have a baby, and so how does that change their biology? And so, and in that video, I share these with my college students. One of my students watched Rebecca's video, and she said, it was amazing to see Rebecca share a video with her kid, because that's something it's great to see a female scientist with a family. And that knocked me out of my chair, because that's breaking down misconceptions that as a male identifying scientist, I don't even think about. But if my female students are saying, I either have to be a scientist or I have to have a family, like that's a false dichotomy that my hope is that this video, and it seems that this video sort of knocked that false perception out. So this is in the Disco library. I have my students reflect on it, and like I said, I'm constantly hearing, I didn't realize that was a thing you could be. Well achieved.
Wow. And folks can access it. This, I know that you're sharing it as a resource. The code is 1,000 STEM Women, and they would have access to view these videos. You mentioned the Discovery Library. You are one of our inspiring creators in the Discovery Library. So folks literally can visit this and find ready-to-use content that Ramesh is sharing. Educators, friends, you just log in via Discovery, and when you go in, we have a series of inspiring creators. So you'll find Ramesh right inside of there and all of his incredible content. Ramesh, there's one more thing that I want to ask you about, because I know you're so passionate about not only the research, the evidence, the story of what is happening with our Earth in regards to climate change. And you host a podcast called Warm Regards. I'd love it if you shared a little bit about this or your own learning in this process.
Sure. So I'm lucky enough to co-host this podcast, Warm Regards, with Professor Jacqueline Gill from the University of Maine. And the goal of the podcast is to highlight the human stories behind climate change. Climate change is a global problem, and we often see it framed as a scientific one. And there's plenty of data showing that human activity from the burning of fossil fuels is really the main driver of what we see as today is modern climate change. But behind every single one of those data points is a human. Behind every single one of those data points is a human story of things like what happens if people have to move because of climate change? How do we think about climate models? Well, that's a scientist who had to spend blood, sweat, and tears building those climate models. We have one of our first episodes this season we chatted with Dr. Warren Washington. He was one of the first I think he was, if not the first, he was one of the first African-American scientists to get their PhD in meteorology and climatology. And he has an amazing story. So in this podcast, we want to share the science, but we also want to share the humanity behind the challenges that we face with climate change, because ultimately climate change is not, it's not only an Earth problem, it's a human problem. And if we start looking at it from that perspective, and if we start looking at climate change from a humanity perspective, this is a problem that we can tackle. Our empathy is going to come out, and our humanity is really going to shine to let us solve this problem.
Wow. And I think together, that word,
Absolutely.
Adding that word together, that
Absolutely.
Our impact, our work, our learning, our understanding, our new awareness, not only maybe, inspired by a day like Earth Day, but our science classes, our conversations we're having with friends and family, our listening in the car to a podcast or on a walk at the park. This is how we create change, right? To help work together to restore our Earth. So, friends, I know we're like right at time. So I want to wrap this up. And I have one more quick question. And just out of curiosity, how do you celebrate Earth Day now? Or do you have memories from your childhood? What do you do to celebrate Earth Day?
I'll take that. It's different every year, as you can see. Like one year I had the big Flipgrid, and this year is a COVID year. Like I can't with just too much. But so every class period I did something different, because I've got kids at home and I've got kids in person. And so we went out and wrote letters to the planet in one of my classes, and we had, in my gardening class, we had an eco-friendly picnic outside. They had so much fun with it. Their definition of eco-friendly and mine might not be exactly the same, but it was an excellent learning opportunity about why we don't compost pizza boxes and things like that. So, I just change it every single year, and I'm always looking for something new and exciting.
That's awesome. Learning never stops, right? The celebrating never stops too.
How do I celebrate Earth Day? I talk about climate change. One of the greatest things we can do when we're thinking about this problem, and I have my students, I say, go talk about it. It's real, it's us, it's happening. The science agrees, the scientists agree, but let's have that conversation, because there's hope around these challenges. And so one of the most climate-friendly things you can do about climate change is to talk about it with your community, with your family, with your friends. So that's how I celebrate it now. Before, when I was a kid, I'd watch Captain Planet and throw some stuff in the recycle bin. So.
Oh my gosh. Fely, how do you do it? Do you have any memories of this growing up, or practices you have in place now or learning that you do?
See, what I want to add right here, Anne, is that when you're an ESL student, this is what you hear, right? That science is very easy. It should be very easy for you because of the quantity of cognates, Spanish cognates, that we have specifically in science, but it's not. And I want to tell everybody that follow these people on social media, follow them, because they're constantly sharing their amazing activities that they design for the kids, where they do a lot of the scaffolding, especially for us as ESL students. Like, you cannot rely completely on those cognates. It's all about bringing the background knowledge, right? That you might have it in another language. But the way these two amazing educators design their lessons and scaffold those lessons for their students is what the key is, basically the key of it, and what everything is all about.
Yeah, I love that. Well, friends, we're at time, and I told you, you know this about me, I can just keep talking. So I don't know if you have to go somewhere. If you need to leave, you're welcome to, but I have 2 resources that I want to share. It's been so fun to revisit learning experiences that you've had in your communities in days gone by, and hear about current practices and ways that you are inspiring your communities, and also sharing just about your personal journey as a lifelong learner in celebration and honor and respect and care for our earth and our environment. Yesterday, I got to participate in something really, really cool with California State Parks. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our partners inside of the Flipgrid Discovery Library. I mentioned again, this is available for folks. You simply log into your Educator account and click on Discovery. But California State Parks is one of our featured partners, and they are sharing incredible resources. They have a collection that's available for everybody, including, incredible resources, 912 science, historical concepts, celebrating climate, ecosystems, the historical artifacts from the state. But I wanted to specifically call out Earth Day in this collection, translated into 19 different languages. And so this Earth Day, topic is all about learning a little bit about sustainability, hearing a message from one of the interpreters at California State Parks, but asking how you can be involved. So definitely check it out. And I just wanted to do this quick scroll to show it's translated in 19 languages, and what a fun way for folks around the world to begin to share their voice and talk about what they can do to help support the earth. So you can find that right inside the California State Parks Discovery Library content. And the last resource, we did do an event with them yesterday, so you can find that virtual field trip right there with California State Parks celebrating Earth Day. Catch a replay. But friends, if you're not familiar, everything is right at youtube.com/Flipgrid. Or if you're curious, Ramesh, don't worry, we'll get you right back on screen in just a moment. Definitely check out that collection at aka.ms/Flipgrid Earth Day. But friends, there are so many, just special ways to celebrate this day. And this is a happy moment for me because I loved getting to hear from you both. I loved getting to learn from you and just take a moment to pause, reflect, learn, grow, change, and celebrate, right? Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Have a good Earth Day. Turn off your water when you're brushing your teeth.
Get lights that turn off after 14 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep. And those are small things that we all can do that make a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
Yesterday, California State Park said take 3 for the sea, 3 pieces of trash you could pick up where you go. Be conscious about where you're putting your waste so that we don't contribute to more pollution. Mm-hmm. Simple things that can change that make a big impact. Yeah. So, all right. Fely, you want to close us out, my friend?
Of course, my friend. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here. To our community, trust me, follow them on social media. They're amazing, amazing educators, amazing mentors. We thank you for your time. And once again, thank you. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con todos nosotros. Have a beautiful rest of the day y feliz Día de la Tierra.
Happy Earth Day, everybody.